It's week 2 of the fantasy football season. You want to make sure you set your lineup with the right quarterback and tight end. And that's why we're going to go game by game, going over all the players that matter. Now, there are some players you don't have to think about. These guys are must starts this week. At quarterback, Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, and Joe Burrow. At tight end, TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, Darren Waller, Travis Kelce if he plays, and Mark Andrews if he plays. All right, we're going to get to the games and the quarterbacks and tight ends on those teams, but first, a quick message.
Introducing our new app, Draft Lane. Connect with us anytime for your start sit, waiver questions, and more. We can instantly access your roster and tell you the exact right moves to make. Access your past leagues and climb the Draft Lane leaderboard and see how you stack up against your competitors. Both Yahoo and Sleeper are supported. Download Draft Lane today and use the promo code ENDGAME to receive $10 in your account. Available on the App Store and Google Play.
All right, let's get to the Vikings and the Eagles. Kirk Cousins put up some numbers last week, but now gets to face the Eagles on the road. Can he do it?
Can he? Sure. Do I want to start him? Not really. Not one of my favorite streaming options this week. Not starting him outside of 2 QB Superflex leagues.
Yeah, I mean, context does matter. Matchup for certain players definitely matters. I get that this game could be high scoring. I get that they could be at some point in the come from behind mode. But there's risk because he could also be turning the ball over and getting sacked. So I'd prefer not to start him in a 1 QB league. Ravens at the Bengals. So we all hope Mark Andrews does play. But if he doesn't, would you trust Isaiah Likely, who really did nothing last week?
No, after last week, no. Not trusting him in my lineup if Mark Andrews is out. There are better options.
Better options, and like I said, the Ravens have better options. They actually have wide receivers now, so if Likely's out there, I don't care. The Bengals got Irv Smith, new tight end. Well, didn't use him much last week. They really didn't do anything last week. Do you think Smith can do something in week 2?
Probably not. Not banking on Irv Smith in any of my lineups. Not starting him.
No. I mean, you need to be getting to desperation, bye weeks, something like that. We're not there yet. Seahawks taking on the Lions. Which Geno Smith will we get? The first half version of last week or the second half version?
I'm going to go with the second half version. Did not like what I saw from Geno Smith last week. Now he's on the road against Detroit, who did a pretty good job against Patrick Mahomes last week. And I really like taking the lower on Geno's line on Underdog Fantasy. Lower than 240.5 yards. Remember, he only had 112 yards last week against the Rams. They held Patrick Mahomes to 226 in Kansas City. I know Geno has more weapons than Mahomes, but still, I don't expect a big Geno game. I would prefer not to stream Geno this week if I can help it, and I'm taking the lower on his line here.
I mean, on paper, this looks like it should be a good matchup for Geno. But in reality, what we've seen from him, not just the second half of last week, but the second half of last season really kind of faltered down the stretch. You gotta wonder. So, very risky start. And then there's Jared Goff. Didn't put up huge numbers like many expected against Kansas City. So what do you expect at home, though, against Seattle?
I expect better numbers. I mean, Matthew Stafford had a pretty good game against this defense on the road. Now Goff at home. We know he plays better at home. I think Goff is a good streaming option this week in 1 QB leagues.
Yeah, I think that you've got to feel better about Goff than Geno Smith at this point. Like you said, Goff had some extreme home road splits last year, always favoring when he was at home. So I think he's solid. I think he could definitely finish within the top 12 quarterbacks for fantasy. And then at tight end, Sam Laporta had a pretty good debut. Where does he sit for you as far as tight ends?
I think he's right there on the cusp of a guy you could start this week. Definitely streamable at the tight end position. If you have a better option, don't play him, but I think he's streamable.
Yeah, kind of a fringe streamer for me. I mean, you hope guys like Kelce and Andrews are back, and if so, most teams shouldn't need a guy like Laporta. So he's a decent option, but not a great one. Colts at the Texans. Anthony Richardson did some things in his debut. He could probably do some more things now that he's facing Houston.
Yeah, I liked him last week. I like him again this week. Impressed me with the arm. He's got weapons. I mean, Josh Downs looked pretty good. He can always run. Not going to say he's a guy you have to start, but I think he's another good streaming option in your 1QB leagues.
Well, I will say that, you know what, this is the time to break him out. They're going to play the Texans twice. It's a team that not a great defense, but also especially against the run. I think Anthony Richardson pretty much is and has to be the run game for this team because they have no other options. So I would say if you do have Richardson, this is the time to start him. And on the other side, he gets to face the number 2 pick, CJ Stroud, who looked pretty decent last week. Threw the ball a lot. That's encouraging. Didn't turn the ball over. Do you think he can do some things against this Colts defense?
Probably. It's not a tough matchup. It's hard to see a big game for CJ Stroud right now, so I'd prefer still not to start him.
Yeah, if I felt like on the other side there's going to be a lot of points put up, I mean, it's possible, but this game doesn't really get me going. And, CJ Stroud, honestly, throughout the season, even though I like him in fantasy, he's really going to be just a super flex option. And then there's Dalton Schultz, who got all of, 4 yards last week. I mean, is he streamable?
Not for me. I am not starting Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, it seems like Stroud's definitely preferring to go to the receivers and the wideout instead of the tight end. So at this point, you can't consider Schultz. All right, Bears at Bucs. What about Cole Kmet?
Yeah, I mean, he actually looked pretty good last week. Got involved. This is a tough secondary. Maybe they got to throw it to him again. I think Kmet's a decent streaming option.
He's always going to be a guy I kind of feel like you need a touchdown because he's not going to get, I mean, look, is any Bear receiver really going to get a ton of catches? Maybe DJ Moore, maybe eventually. Kmet is a streaming option. We'll put it that way. And then there's Baker Mayfield, acquitted himself pretty well in his Tampa debut. Where would he fall as far as quarterback streamers?
I mean, look, impressed by the way he played last week. He surprised me, but I'm never starting Baker Mayfield. Not happening.
All right, well, I'm not either. I mean, at some point, I think like the other shoe's going to fall, and we're going to see what we've seen from Baker Mayfield the past few years, which is why he's on his 4th team. It's not a bad matchup, but again, even in a Superflex 2QB league, I hope you got a better option. Cade Otton, not huge numbers, but look, he was on the field a lot, got some good metrics. Can he interest you?
In my fantasy point per metric league, maybe. No, not starting him.
Yeah, you can't consider Otton. There's no way. And when the Chiefs face the Jaguars, well, you're good at quarterback if you got either one. You're good at tight end if you got Kelsey. Are you good if you have Evan Engram against the Chiefs?
Yeah, I like this matchup a lot for Evan Engram. Look, the Chiefs just gave up a pretty nice game to Sam Laporta in his first ever start. Not strong against the tight end. I think Engram is a strong start this week.
Look, when we go over those tight ends who are no doubt must starts, Engram isn't there, but he's kind of just below that tier. So if you got Engram, this is definitely a matchup you're going to want to put him in. Packers will be taking on the Falcons. Jordan Love, one of the more popular pickups among quarterback this week. Do you go ahead and roll him out against the Falcons?
I mean, yes, but I'm not going to say, I would still prefer Jared Goff over him. But I think Jordan Love is a good streaming option in this matchup this week. So, streamable, not necessarily my favorite streamer, but a good streamer.
I think he might be my favorite streamer this week because not just that he looked good last week, but playing in the Dome, not a great defense. I like the fact that he might get Christian Watson back, but he'll also have Romeo Doubs a little bit healthier. More experience here. I think Jordan Love is a really good option. And what about his tight end, Luke Musgrave, who was oh so close to making this huge play? Didn't quite happen for a score, but do you think he could be a starting option?
Yeah, again, I think he's definitely streamable, especially if Christian Watson is out. If Watson is back, that makes him a little less appealing. But if Watson's out, he's streamable.
Yeah, he's still looking pretty good. I think that, among all these tight ends we've considered, he maybe not my favorite, but he's up there. And then there's Desmond Ridder. I mean, I don't know if this guy honestly is going to be an option for fantasy this year, even in a deep 2QB league.
Yeah, and against the Packers, no way.
And then I really wish we could just say Kyle Pitts is an auto start, but he's not. I mean, he wasn't Drake London bad last week, but are we going to see what we want from him?
Who knows? I mean, he did have a big play called back by a holding. He at least caught passes and got yards. So I think you got to roll him out again. But man, this is not looking good so far.
Definitely concerning, but look, it's not like with Drake London where you can just sit him and play a different receiver who you have. If you got Kyle Pitts, I mean, again, are you really sitting him for some of these other guys we've talked about, a rookie tight end? Still go with Pitts, bank on his big playability. All right, Raiders going to take on the Bills. Jimmy G wasn't too bad last week, and that was in Denver, but now he has to go to Buffalo. What can he do?
I mean, maybe he can do something, but it's not going to be on any of my teams. On the road in Buffalo, no thanks.
No, definitely not. The upside just isn't there, so I think he's a pretty easy sit. All right, Buffalo, we got the interesting rookie Dalton Kincaid. Didn't do a whole lot in his debut. Do you think he does more against the Raiders?
Probably not. I mean, it's not a horrible matchup, but not ready to put him in any of my lineups yet.
It's going to take time. He's a rookie tight end. Matchup on paper looks good, but you can do better. And then I guess some people still have Dawson Knox rostered. If they do, what would you tell them?
Don't start him.
I'd probably say you could drop him, but yeah, if you do have him, you don't need to start him. Chargers at the Titans. Looks like this is a good opportunity for this Chargers offense. Could Gerald Everett be a part of that?
No, I mean, I'm going to say the same thing. He needs Mike Williams and or Keenan Allen to be out. And look, we saw last week when Mike Williams went out for a little bit, Quentin Johnston started to get some targets. So he might need even more than that. Not starting Gerald Everett.
Yeah, too many mouths to feed here. Look, sure, the Titans aren't going to scare you, but Everett just doesn't interest me. And speaking of, let's talk about Ryan Tannehill. Almost as bad as you can get, I would say, last week. 3 interceptions, just couldn't move the ball very often. Now he gets the Chargers, who gave up a ton of yards to Miami. Which way does this go?
I mean, he'll probably be better because it is the Chargers, but not enough for me to start him. I'm not starting Ryan Tannehill.
I am never going to start Ryan Tannehill, but look, I would just say I think this game might make the Chargers defense look a little bit better. And then Chig Okonkwo, popular sleeper early in the preseason. A lot of that helium has just disappeared. I mean, do we really need to have him on rosters at this point?
No, I mean, he almost caught a long touchdown, but it was a flea flicker play. Like, it wasn't, you don't even need Chig, no.
Talented player, just maybe in the wrong offensive system. So at this point, you can't consider him. 49ers going to take on the Rams. This should be an interesting divisional contest. Let's start with Brock Purdy, who had himself a really good first half and then really just didn't need to do much in the second half. What kind of numbers do you think he can put up here?
Well, he can always put up decent numbers because he's got weapons, he's got playmakers. Not a guy I really ever want to start in a 1 QB league, but I think in like a 2 QB Superflex league, he's fine.
Yeah, I mean, he'll never be a set and forget quarterback. Obviously not a must start. But I will say, I mean, his numbers could have been a lot better if there was any sort of a fight put up by Pittsburgh last week. He had over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns just in the first half. So I really am taking a hard look at his line on Underdog. If you go to the pick'ems right now, 214.5 yards. I'm definitely going higher than that for the whole game against this Rams defense that, look, give them credit for what they did in the second half to Seattle, but I think that's more about Seattle than about the Rams. Brock Purdy can easily go over this, so he's one of my favorite picks for this week. If you agree with us, you can take that Geno Smith lower, Brock Purdy higher, combine those, triple your money on Underdog, or you can mix and match any other picks. There's so many options to choose from week 2 already live, so go ahead and sign up on Underdog if you haven't already. Just make sure that you use promo code ENDGAME to get your deposit match up to $100. And then there's Matt Stafford, who, he definitely surprised me last week. Didn't think he'd put up numbers with that receiving core. He did. Can he do it against this Niners defense, though?
Yeah, it surprised me too. Arm looks good. He looks healthy. But, man, this is a great defense. I'm not starting Matt Stafford.
Yeah, at this point, between the quarterback versus the defensive unit, I'm going to give the edge to the defense. I think they'll find ways to pressure him. I'm not starting Stafford. Tyler Higbee, thought he would be a smash pick last week. He didn't. Can he do anything here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe. I think he's still streamable in this matchup, but don't feel great about him like I did last week.
No, I mean, he already let us down last week in what was an okay matchup. Yeah, against the Niners, I would definitely rather sit him and I would shoot for upside elsewhere. Giants at the Cardinals, and I think we're contractually obligated to talk about these quarterbacks in fantasy football. Daniel Jones is the starter for the Giants. Should he be the starter in your fantasy team?
I mean, I think this week he's at least streamable. I'm not ready to say that this Cardinals defense is good yet, so I got to think they bounce back and are a little better. I don't think he's a guy you have to start, but he's streamable this week.
I'm not ready to say that Cardinals defense is good, but I'm definitely ready to say that the Giants offense is not good. And I don't think I'm just talking about overreacting to week one. I have never been in on Daniel Jones. I'm not in on him now. I'm sitting him. And the Cardinals still enrolling with Josh Dobbs. Acquitted himself fairly well, but he really didn't do much for fantasy. Could he do anything this week?
No upside with Josh Dobbs. Not starting him.
No. Game manager, decent, real life quarterback, nothing that should interest you for fantasy. Now, Zach Ertz might be interesting because, hey, he's healthy, he played, and he got a few targets. Is he a streamer?
I mean, you got to be really desperate. Yeah, he got targets, he got looks, but it's still their targets and looks from Josh Dobbs. Really don't want to start Zach Ertz.
Yeah, and that's when you get into the whole quality of target thing, but also the scoring upside. It's just not quite there. So a little more of a low-end streamer. All right, now we got Jets Cowboys. You know, we thought this would be Aaron Rodgers going to Dallas in game 2 as a Jet. If it's Zach Wilson and he's going to Dallas to face this Cowboys defense, I mean, do I need to ask?
No, even less interest. No chance.
Tyler Conklin, maybe a little less appealing than he was a week ago, but also facing the Cowboys defense, is he even on the radar?
Not even on the radar.
No, I don't think he can be. There's no way. Then we got Dak Prescott. I mean, this is also a tough matchup on the other side going against this Jets defense. Where does Dak fall for you?
Yeah, I mean, tough matchup for sure. Unless you somehow have a really good option, like maybe you drafted 2 good QBs. I think you almost kind of have to start Dak. Like, there's not a lot of quarterbacks I would still start over him.
Yeah, I mean, he's for the most part a guy you want to just kind of set and forget most weeks. If there's a week where you can find another option, maybe one of those guys we've talked about, like a Goff or a Love, do that if you can. Just don't drop anybody really good to do it. And then for Jake Ferguson, good news is he was targeted 7 times. Bad news is he didn't catch most of those targets. How do you feel about him?
Not good. He looked terrible, dropping an easy first down. Yeah, I think there are better options than him this week.
Maybe that connection will evolve eventually, but I am not even considering it in week 2. Washington against Denver. We get start 2 of the season for Sam Howell. How do you think he will fare?
Probably not good. Against Denver, yeah. I liked him last week as a streamer. Not starting him this week.
Yeah, if you couldn't get it done at home against the Cardinals, not going to trust him on the road against the Broncos, even in Superflex. Logan Thomas was out there, did get some targets, a few catches. What do you think he can do?
Against Denver with Sam Howell, not a lot, not starting him.
Yeah, it stands to reason, don't like the quarterback, you shouldn't like his targets too much. So, not going with Logan Thomas. And then I'm curious your impression of Russell Wilson based on what we saw, and what do you think he can do at home against the Commanders?
I mean, my impression was he wasn't awful, but he also wasn't very good. It's the Commanders. He doesn't look like he's going to put up big yardage totals. Not starting Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I'm very quickly losing any interest I might have had in Russ Wilson for fantasy, so this is definitely not a matchup I would consider him. And then it looks like the starting tight end is Adam Troutman, but also Greg Dulcich, for what it's worth, left with a leg injury. So is Troutman somebody who becomes interesting?
Interesting is probably the word. A streamer, but only in very deep leagues.
Yeah, you're still reaching pretty deep here. There's, I think, several guys we've discussed that I would prefer over Troutman. Dolphins at the Patriots. I get it. I guess we need to wait at least another week or 2 before we make Tua a no doubt must start. But in this game against New England on the road, what do you think?
I mean, you can't feel great. They just, kind of shut down Jalen Hurts. But Tua has weapons. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, they can take a pass at any time and take it to the house. So I think you still got to roll with him. Just don't expect, video game numbers this week.
Yeah, it didn't put up great numbers against New England last year. And yeah, this is a tough defense in a road game. So he's still startable, always startable with the weapons he has. But yeah, I guess a little bit on the lower end of the QB1 spectrum. Now, what about Mac Jones? I mean, he wound up with good numbers overall. Where does he land in terms of streaming options?
2 QB Superflex only. I'm not going to start him in a 1 QB league.
I don't think I'm ever going to start him in a single QB league, no matter what the matchup is. And look, if the Dolphins can put up a lot of numbers on offense again, and the Patriots have to try to match him or play catch up, sure, it's possible. But again, only Superflex. And Hunter Henry was, I guess, one of the better pleasant surprises at tight end. And for New England, how do you feel about him?
I feel pretty good. I mean, he's kind of in one of those good situations where they don't really have a stud wide receiver. He should, be targeted a lot again. Always has touchdown upside. I think he's a good streaming option.
Yeah, I will say he's kind of creeping up there for me. If you're a guy needing to replace a tight end, looking for a good streaming option, he's probably one of the better choices for week 2. Saints will take on the Panthers in Carolina. So let's start with Derek Carr. Pretty good debut for the Saints. Can he follow it up with another good game?
Yeah, this is not as good of a matchup. I really liked him last week. Not a guy I'm really going to like very often. 2 QB Superflex only.
I mean, I kind of like Carr. I think I will like him pretty often. But again, keep this in mind as a streaming option. I don't know that he's ever going to jump up into the top 10 for me or anything. But I'm not scared of this matchup. I think he could be a solid bet. The only thing I worry is that he just doesn't need to pass the ball as much. And this defense is not as bad as Tennessee's for the pass defense. So he's a decent option. And then there's Juwan Johnson at tight end. Not huge numbers last week. He did something, but he does have 3 pretty good receivers to contend with.
Yeah, I think that's the problem here. There's too many mouths to feed. Maybe maybe soon when Michael Thomas is no longer on the field, I'll consider him again. But right now, I'm not going to start him.
You read my mind, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Until further notice, low-end streaming option. And then the rookie, Bryce Young, not bad in his debut, but against the Saints?
Yeah, no chance I'm starting him against the Saints. No way.
No, I think it's going to be a rough second game. First home game, sure, but yeah, he just does not have enough weapons. I wouldn't start him. Now, one of Young's top options in week 1 was the tight end Hayden Hurst. You got to be encouraged. He's a guy who looked like a strong pickup, but would you start him?
I think he's worth a stream. He looked like he had the trust with Bryce Young. I mean, look at this receiving group. Jonathan Mingo, a rookie. Adam Thielen is dust. Maybe Chark will play. I think Hayden Hurst is a good streaming option.
This is kind of the opposite of the Juwan Johnson situation where he's contending with some good receivers around him. Hayden Hurst might be the beneficiary of the fact that it's just a kind of an uncertain group in Carolina. So I think Hayden Hurst is still a very good option. And then week 2 will end with Cleveland taking on Pittsburgh. Let's talk to Deshaun Watson. He was okay in the opener, but they didn't really need to pass the ball a whole lot. The weather wasn't good. What do you expect in Pittsburgh?
I expect them to be good. I mean, I talked up this Pittsburgh defense all week, and then they looked terrible against Brock Purdy and the 49ers. The secondary especially. I mean, yeah, they got the pass rush with TJ Watt, but the secondary looked really bad. I think Deshaun Watson will be good this week. I'm starting him.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers defense can't be that bad, but I will say Deshaun Watson was a very popular late-ish QB pick for us. If you got him, you roll with him, and you should be good. David Njoku, also one of those later tight end picks. Not a great debut, but same thing applies. Does he rebound this week?
Maybe. I do wonder if there's some tight ends we've talked about, like maybe Hunter Henry, that I would prefer to start over him this week. I mean, I think Njoku will be okay, but going to be very volatile this year. So I still think he's a good start, though.
Yeah, you'd have to have a tight end that you feel better about for sure. Henry might be the only guy. For the most part, I have Njoku. I'm still going to start him. Look, Harrison Bryant, the backup tight end, did catch a touchdown, which is unfortunate. Maybe this week it's Njoku. Kenny Pickett had a season opener to forget. Does he bounce back against this Cleveland defense?
I don't think so. Cleveland has a great pass rush. They looked good last week. Maybe part of that was Joe Burrow just being rusty, but I mean, is Kenny Pickett better than a rusty Joe Burrow? I'm not really sure. Not starting Kenny Pickett.
You can't start Kenny Pickett. Look, there will be better days, but this Cleveland pass defense is really good. That pass rush, obviously, Myles Garrett, pretty good, so you can't risk it. And the Freiermuth is interesting. Not a lot last week, but he did find the end zone. And then he got injured, but he should be okay. And then Deontay Johnson might not play. So altogether, what does that make you think about him?
Freiermuth, one of those guys for me. Not a must start, but if you got him, you're probably starting him pretty much every week.
Should feel okay about him. I think he's borderline must start. That's our take on all the quarterbacks and tight ends you need to know about for fantasy in week 2. What about your wide receiver room? Well, we got you covered there. Check out this start sit video.